everyone and welcome. So today I have a very special Funko Pop figure video for you guys. This is one of a friend of mine who has commissioned one, and she has decided she wants a Funko Pop figure of Charlie Mouse. That's right, I'm making a Funko Pop figure for my friend Katy Vaughan Art. She actually has her own art channel here on YouTube. You should definitely check it out. She's fantastic. And yeah, so let's go make a Funko Pop figure of Charlie. For the materials, I'm using this DIY Funko base here, as well as some polymer clay and some random sort of sculpting tools, as well as some other things like liquid Fimo. To start off, I have to poke some holes onto the sides of this guy's head, and this is so that I can add some wire which will be supports for the ears. Next, I'm rolling out some clay with my clay roller, and we're going to cut some ear shapes to go on either sides of those wire supports. Now I'm sort of just cutting a bit of a semicircle shape, and I'm making 4 of these so that I can have one on either side of the wire and either side of the head. Making sure I smoothen it down nicely so there's no little sort of cracks in between the Funko base and the ears. After this, it is time to sort of cut the ears to shape and make sure that they're a good shape for Charlie's little mouse ears. After that, it's now time to add a little bit of clay to the front of the face. Now this is mainly to give him a little tiny mouse snout and also to cover up the sort of generic nose that the Funko has. Now it's time to carve out the inner parts of the Charlie Mouse's ears. This is so that there's a little section that I can color in pink, and just to give it a little bit more detail instead of just like a flat semicircle on its head. I'm trying to make sure that I smoothen out each area too, because I don't want it to be too rough. Time to cut some thin strips of clay, and I'm going to use these as the straps of his overalls / dungarees. While pressing them firmly on the base, I'm trying not to sort of deform them because I still want it to look like a thin piece of fabric. Time to cut a small semicircle, and this is going to act as the pocket on his dungarees, and yeah, I really like how tiny and cute it is. Now Charlie has this cute spiky hair on the top of his head, so I'm going to use some little bits of clay here to try and sculpt a cute little spiky hairdo for this little mouse. I rolled some simple sausage shapes and then cut them and sort of rolled them into a bit of a sort of a cone triangle shape. And then I sort of bent it around to make it look like the spiky hair, pressing it on firmly and smoothing out the edges where it connects to the head. Now it's time to make Charlie's tail, as a mouse usually does have a very long tail, unless it's a Manx mouse. But anyways, I used a bit of wire and I sort of curved it around into a shape that I thought would look nice for a mouse's tail, and then I sort of wrapped it up in some clay, and then after that I covered it in some of the liquid Fimo clay, and then I added another layer of clay over the top of that. Now this is just so I could, keep it strong, because the liquid Fimo is a bit more flexible, so it's going to sort of help prevent any sort of cracking or anything like that on the tail. After this, it was time to smoothen out all of the edges on the tail, because I'm going to be baking it before actually placing it onto Charlie, and I want to make sure that it looks smooth and like a mouse tail instead of like a lumpy worm. Time to connect the tail to the body, and now I've baked both of these pieces so that I can handle them easier and like sort of not ruin the piece by holding it by the ears and squishing the ears. I'm going to use my drill with a very small drill piece, and I'm going to drill a hole into his butt, which is where the tail is going to connect. Now I left a bit of wire exposed on the tail, and this was so that I could place it inside of that hole and fill the hole up with more liquid Fimo and a little bit more of the Fimo/Sculpey polymer clay stuff, and then bake it again, and that will keep it nice and secure onto it. After I baked it again, this is time to sand it. Now with sculpting and stuff, sometimes you can have some fingerprints and just little imperfections and dents here and there during the sculpting process. Now I like to use sandpaper just to sort of sand the surface, make it nice and smooth, well not too smooth because we're going to paint it soon. And yeah, I really like sanding it because it just helps so much with just like getting rid of those little tiny cracks or little parts where two pieces of clay connect to each other. Time to paint this little guy, and I'm using my sonjas matte flow acrylics. They're pretty nice acrylics, and I really like the sort of matte texture that they have. It's sort of different to other acrylics, I feel. But yeah, I'm just sitting it on this sort of wooden turntable thing which I got from Kmart, and that just sort of helps me rotate the little guy around so I can paint in different areas without actually having to touch him and wreck the painting surface. Now I did actually cover the whole thing with a layer of acrylic gesso beforehand. Now I didn't actually film that because it's not overly important to show that, because it's just painting a white thing in white, but I do this because I want the primer on the polymer clay to be the same sort of primer on the base. That way the paint sort of goes on seamlessly and looks good. I'm using some light brown colors for his fur, as well as a bright yellow for his shirt and a very sort of pale blue for his dungarees. Now for his face, I am painting his eyes in with white, which I'll go in later with more details. And for his ears, I'm using a very sort of pale pink color to paint in the ears. Now with that, I just used a little bit of white and a little bit of crimson mixed together, and it makes a really nice sort of soft pink color that I really like for the insides of his ears. Now this is one of my favorite parts actually. When doing details like tiny little lines, I really do prefer to use a black watercolor pencil to draw in those details because it is so much easier to use a pencil than a tiny little paintbrush. You can get way smoother lines, and if you make a mistake, you can easily wipe it away with a bit of water. Now, with using that, you kind of have to put a bit of a sort of a clear coat over the top of the watercolor pencil. Now this is because watercolor is not waterproof, I guess. You can sort of skip that if you want, but if the thing will get wet at all, that paint will sort of, you know, drip and spread, and it's not permanent, so it's good to have a bit of a coat to sort of protect that. But here is the final result, and I absolutely love it. I think he's just so adorable. I know the eyebrows aren't perfectly symmetrical, but who has symmetrical eyebrows anyways? Not me, probably. But thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and Katy, I hope you enjoyed watching this being made and also receiving your Funko Pop. Please do go check out Katy's channel. She's awesome. She's a really good friend, and yeah. Please smash like, subscribe to get your scribble fix in the future, and I will see you in my next video. Bye everyone!